CPC and C64 presents
Battle of the Planets.
a Playguide and video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi there again, welcome to another Lemon 64 Playguide and review. Let's check out another one. This is Battle of the Planets, released by Macrogen in 1986. On the title screen we can see something spinning around almost like an Elite game, and this is almost like an Elite game because it's a vector simulator in a spaceship. And you can see at the top of the screen we can change between the keyboard and the joystick, and you can see the controls underneath, left, right, up and down, fire. We can also press the Z key for the rockets, change the speed as well with 0 and 9, and also we can change the mode of operation, which you can see in the bottom right corner. By pressing the 1 to 5 keys we can toggle the different aspects of our computer. Let's select joystick port 2, press fire and check this out. We begin in space, and all the red markers you can see are actually radar points. The crosses are the enemy, and the black filled in circle, as opposed to the red filled in circle, is actually a warp point. So let's check out the warp point first of all, and fly all the way down there. By pressing the 0 key we can increase the thrust as long as we have the 2 selected, and you can see a great loading picture on the loading of this game. Definitely some artwork and some rendering has gone into this game. But let's just get to the warp gate and check that out. From here we can check out the 5 locations: Zenith, Elias, Harath, Olexal and Pete. So let's just select number 1 for this, and we begin in space. So what can we do? Well, first of all we can head towards those enemies, or if we find a solid circle like that, that's actually a planet that we can land on. So let's try to track down those enemies, and in the sound effects department you can hear somebody blasting away at us, because in space there's always one of the enemy blasting away. We'll gain a meagre score on the bottom left corner for blowing certain things up, and I think there are maybe 10 or 15 of Zoltar's ships that are invading these systems, and once you've blown those up then you can move on to the next one. Even though you can see thrust on full power, we're not really gaining much on that enemy, and that can be one of the infuriating parts of this game. Sometimes the enemy comes to you, but sometimes they are running away, and even on full power we cannot chase after them, and we cannot get a lock on with our beams either. So let's move around. You can see quite a lot of enemies floating around in space, but if we move towards the moon icons, then those will appear large because those are large objects. Sometimes enemies can pass straight by us as well, so sometimes it's best just to fly around. To fire at those enemy ships we have some lasers, just like Star Trek, and we also have some missiles as well that we can fire at any point, but we only have a limited stock of missiles. And so let's maneuver our way through those control options by pressing the 1 to 5 keys, and you can see the main fuel and thrust and temperature is reading out on the 2, and on the 3 we have the planet itself, which shows up the number of landers that have landed on there and the number of life force remaining on the planet. once that gets down to 0, it means Zoltar has blown it up. So that's the level over. So let's speed up as much as we can. You can see the temperature is on maximum, and that means that sometimes we will lose all of our thrust because we are using up too much power. On the surface you can see landing craft, various shapes and sizes. Some of those will be flying saucers and some of those will be tanks. You might also notice extra items appearing, the red ones. You can see a fuel meter there. That means that we can collide with a fuel dump and get some more fuel back. And there is also this one, which is a wrench and a spanner. That means that if we move to that direction, we'll find the repair shop, and it would be wise to use the repair shop because colliding with the enemies like this will result in a lack of shield status. And if we finally press the 1 key, we'll get to see that shield. So what I'm actually trying to do is to head back to the vehicle repair shop, which will recharge all of our shields for free. The only problem is we aren't quite sure which one it is, and this is definitely the repair one because I followed the marker which told me it was, so all I have to do is to collide with this before I run out of shield power, otherwise it's going to be game over because this thing runs really slowly and I'm not really moving forward very quickly. It also means that I'm under attack and I've been destroyed. It'll also give us a passcode as well, but let's just skip through that and have another play of this game. This time let's head straight towards the planet to show you what I was meant to show you a minute ago. And it really does take ages to move forward. You have to be on the power unit screen in order to change your thrust. Otherwise, it won't necessarily work, and we won't necessarily move any more quickly forward. You can see there is one thing on the left and one thing on the right. We don't know whether this is a fuel dump or whether it's the repair factory, unless we move that off the screen and follow the radar. Let's just speed that footage up, and it ends up being the fuel ship, which is not what we needed. In this case, you start off with full fuel, of course, so you really want to leave the fuel ship until you really need it. And let's leave the repair until we really need it. Blast off into the sky with maximum thrust, and hopefully that will get us back out into space. Now we can find some more enemies, and the same 10 or 15 guys are still here, all firing towards us. And the best thing at the start of the game is to take out maybe 3 or 4 of the guys in space, depending on our shields. And then as soon as the shields run down, leg it back to that planet, get a full shield recharge and a full armament as well, and then set off back into space again. You will probably need 3 or 4 trips to do that, because it takes some time to blow up all of these enemies, and then once the system is clear, you can then move on to a new system. Again, trying to chase after those guys on full power sometimes isn't opportune, and all that does is increase our temperature. If we're firing the laser, that'll increase it as well, and anything that we do will increase the temperature. So let's just speed that footage up, and just like a Viper, we can take that thing out using a variety of weapons, and we do get a recharge of our rockets as well if we collide with the repair shop on the planet. So you can see, well, there was a warp gate and there's three enemies in our vicinity, and there is also that planet in the distance. So in this game you have to toggle between the various systems, and the laser system doesn't really need to be looked at too much, and even though that will overheat if you don't take care of pressing the laser. The rocket system, well, we do have maybe 20 rockets, so there isn't much point looking at that unless we're running out. So the planet data is useful for telling us what's on the planet and when we should get down there. If 3 landers have landed, then that's the opportune time. The rest of the time you can leave it on the power unit, and then we can toggle the thrust and take a look at the fuel as well. So yet again, we've found another one of these, and if it's a magic one, if it's the repair shop, then that's great. If not, we'll have to waste time trying to get in there to find out what it is. You can see our shield power is bottoming out, and the enemy's there bottoming us out, but it's another fuel ship. So let's destroy this with some more missiles, and it looks a bit like a tank, a bit like Battle Zone, only it looks more like an iron than a tank. But this is 3D Battle Zone, and for 1984 this was a pretty darn good effort in space and on the planet, blowing up various things with various different types of ammo, with fuel to look out for and shields as well. So this game has a lot going on for it, and it does take some time, maybe not as long as Elite, but it really does take some time to pad all the way over there. And so this has to be the repair shop. Let's get in there, let's refuel and rearm, fast forward that, get in and then check that out. Again, if we overload the thrusters on full temps, unfortunately that will mean that we slow down. So let's get in and check it out. And once we've collided, that will give us an unlimited time to take a breather, and then when we press the fire button, we'll be back out again with full shields. This game, Battle of the Planets, is of course based on the, as far as I know, late 70s cartoon series. It was originally created by Chris Hinsley on the ZX Spectrum, and he's more famous for Pyjamarama and Frostbite and Everyone's a Wally, perhaps one of the strongest or the weakest in the Wally Week games. So Chris Hinsley, this definitely was converted and ported onto the C64, virtually verbatim, and so we didn't get to find out who ported this particular game. If our temperatures are also sky high, we won't be able to take off either, because we'll need to maintain maximum thrust for maybe 10 seconds to leave the atmosphere. So all we can do is to wait for that temperature to drop down by not using the thrust, otherwise basically we'll lose all thrust and we'll bottom out due to that. So let's get into the sky, back into the space, and unfortunately it doesn't tell us how many of Zoltar's enemies are remaining. But you can see some terrific art, and some concept art was created for the original ZX Spectrum of this game. And once we've visited the planet a few times, there are only a few ships left. And you may have noticed on the planet readout, 3 landers have already landed, so that's my next port of call, and try to save the inhabitants of this planet. And so you can wait around on the planet, but I don't think that the landers land unless you take off again, and then you'll have to wait for them to do that. So it's one of those backwards and forwards games, and sometimes it can keep us on our toes, and sometimes when the enemies are just out of reach, it's a bit infuriating. So once you see me tackling the last few enemies, I couldn't find any reviews of this game. In fact, I was struggling to find anything about this game at all. It's not even on the Lemon 64 database. So this is a 3D elite type ship, and I'd give this perhaps 7.5 out of 10. It doesn't have the sustainability, even though it does have the shields that we can top up forever, and the missiles as well, and the landers. It's definitely a step up from Missile Command, which was another early 80s game. But this isn't the Star Trek game that we saw last week, and the Star Trek game really was pushing the machine to its limits, and this one is tested out the machine, and sometimes, because this is a ZX conversion, it can crawl along. But this is a competent game, and so I'll probably give this 7.5 out of 10, particularly for its date, and I've definitely played a heck of a lot worse games than this. I mean, ridiculously worse games than this, which were released a lot later on. So, thank you for viewing another Playguide and review, and I hope this has explained this a bit more, and thank you.
Fearless young orphans protecting Earth's entire galaxy. Always 5, acting as one. Dedicated, inseparable, invincible.